After hours of studying, he was now sure. He reached for his notebook and pulled it in front of him. He wasn't going to tell anyone what he realized. He knew what would happen to him if he did. But he still had to record it. He had been working on the anatomical structure of birds for a while, and this made him dream far beyond his time. Couldn't the body structure of birds be imitated? Couldn't mathematics take people to the sky? He kept pages of notes and made diagrams. He knew that man could rise to heaven. While he was preoccupied with the issue of ascending to the sky, he was of course also paying close attention to what was happening in the sky. There was a movement, but where was the center of this movement? What he saw in the sky, no one knew. What he was sure that day could lead to his death. He opened his notebook. He took his pen slowly. He was left-handed and used to writing from left to right. What he wrote could only be understood with the help of a mirror. He wrote not for anyone to read, but so that he could look at it again and again. His notebooks were a kind of atlas of secrets. There were drawings, plans, notes, quotes, and he was not going to publish any of them or show them to anyone. Everyone believed in what the church said and did not even question the thesis that the sun revolves around the earth. That day, on that page, he wrote the truth that would endanger the lives of many scientists even centuries later, and which the church completely rejected. The sun doesn't actually rotate. How did he capture the mystery in the painting? In the numerous examinations made on the picture, some people saw some numbers in the model's eyes, and some claimed to have found some codes on the bridge visible in the background of the picture. In fact, what made this painting great was, first of all, another technique. His scientific observations had led him to a truth. Until Leonardo, all painters drew their figures by limiting them to hard lines. But he was going to change that completely. He depicted his figure, especially the corners of the eyes and lips, not with hard and precise lines, but with soft lines disappearing in the shadow. Leonardo had shaded them by softening them slightly. This technique would be called sfumato smoky. This technique was also the key to the mystery. It was one of the details that made Mona Lisa so important and mysterious. The magic of the Mona Lisa, which people can see sometimes bitterly, sometimes smilingly, sometimes solemnly, sometimes sadly whenever they look at it, is that Leonardo, who knew the expressions and emotions well, distributed them with light and shadow instead of separating them with clear lines. Moreover, until then, symmetry in the face was sought. Leonardo knew that there was no symmetry in the human face, and that it completely disappeared, especially when emotions were intense. He used this on both the figure and the background. There was no symmetry in his lips, his eyes, or the landscape behind him. This duality created a stronger depth and caused the painting to lead to new stories. Is his real secret the numbers he is said to hide? Leonardo, who knew how to use depth well, placed an extending landscape behind his model, even though it was the Mona Lisa herself that was enormously eye-catching in the painting. The tone he used here was designed according to the change in perceived light as depth increases. While a person sees the object he focuses on clearly, he sees the background a little more blurry. Leonardo was bringing his painting closer to the human experience of vision. Another feature was Mona Lisa's stance. The habit until then was to draw the figure directly from the front or from the silhouette. Leonardo was looking for a different view by drawing slightly from the side. He believed in possibilities and possibilities, not in memorizations. It was understandable to look for secrets and mysteries in the works of Leonardo, a genius whose talents still amaze and are discussed 500 years after his death in 1519. But instead of wasting time with conspiracy theories, it was necessary to look at how he combined his mathematical and engineering skills with manual dexterity. Because his real genius was not in whether a few brush strokes resembled a few numbers, but in his technique and observation ability that transcended the ages. The real secret of his genius was hidden in his belief in science and feelings. Here was the secret of Leonardo, who looked at the body of a dead person in the eyes of a living creature with the same curiosity, watched the changes of emotions and waves with the same interest, and devoted himself to the infinity of numbers and people. As a devoted soul, he was experiencing the pleasure of satisfying an endless curiosity when he wrote, "The sun does not actually rotate." After writing this sentence in his notebook, he immediately turned to new pursuits. Every discovery meant a new stroke in the river of infinity, and perhaps he was not counting a single stroke. In the Atlas of Secrets, there was only truth and feeling. He watched The Last Supper for hours. Emotions were effective in determining Leonardo's subjects. When he was asked to paint a kind of mural, in the refectory of the Santa Maria del Grazie monastery, the expectation was that it would depict a moment when Jesus was breaking bread with his disciples. But he decided at a very different moment. At the moment when Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "One of you will betray me." Upon these words, which had a shocking effect, the disciples looked at each other with surprise, concern, and fear, and a different expression appeared on each of their faces. Of course, there is also the reality. He kept looking for a model in the haunted places of the city to draw Judas, who would betray Jesus. He wanted to see the eyes of a criminal. The halo thought to be on Jesus' head was described as a direct beam of light until that day. Leonardo showed this with the light reflected from the window. No matter what, he could not lose touch with reality. He had left countless works unfinished until that day. During the process of making the fresco, there were those who thought that Leonardo would not be able to finish this work. Because, according to his contemporaries, he sometimes came and examined the fresco all day long, but did not make even the slightest addition. As Gombrich points out, the legacy Leonardo left us was the fruit of this thinking. Because he was able to go down in history, because he was able to observe human nature, emotions and nature, weigh everything he did on the scales of reality over and over again, and was passionately devoted to it. Vitruvian Man. What is Vitruvian Man? The work called Vitruvian Man, one of the sketches drawn by the famous painter, astronomer, architect, inventor, mathematician, philosopher, sculptor, anatomist, botanist, cartographer, geologist, writer, and painter Leonardo da Vinci, has survived to this day. The Vitruvian Man in this work was created by Da Vinci using the proportions found in his work De Architectura, written by the famous ancient Roman writer and architect Marcus Vitruvius Pollio. In the work, there is a picture of a man in the middle of the interlocking circle and square. The man depicted here is a naked man and his limbs are drawn overlapping each other, both closed and open. In the notes belonging to Leonardo da Vinci next to the image, the subject of human proportions, or in other words, law of proportions, is mentioned. This work is currently on display at the Gallery dell'Accademia, located within the borders of Venice. It is known that Leonardo da Vinci created the Vitruvian Man between 1490 and 1492. This coincides with the times of the Renaissance period. Famous thinker Leonardo da Vinci, whose title is philosopher, strives to integrate humans and nature. According to the information in Encyclopaedia Britannica, Da Vinci argues that the human body is an analogy of the functioning of the universe. Based on this, scientists believe that the spirit of the circle found in the Vitruvian Man. He thinks that the square represents matter, and therefore it was drawn by considering both aspects of the man and the work. What is the golden ratio? The human proportions, or law of proportions, used in the Vitruvian Man is one of the similarities of nature and human life that we know today as the golden ratio, just like in Da Vinci's view. The concept called the golden ratio in mathematics is the name given to the situation when the ratio of the larger and smaller of two quantities is the same as the ratio of the sum of all quantities. This ratio has been frequently used in art and architecture from past to present to achieve the best harmony and establish order. It is not known who first discovered or used the golden ratio, which is represented as the number phi and takes its name from Leonardo Fibonacci's surname. As a mathematician, Leonardo da Vinci is known to have worked on the number phi, the golden ratio, and one of his most famous works on this subject is the Vitruvian Man. Features of the Vitruvian Man work. When the features of the Vitruvian Man work are examined, it is seen that its drawing was made according to the golden ratio. Accordingly, when the distance from the soles of the man's feet to his navel is compared and the distance from his navel to the top of his head is proportioned, the golden ratio is obtained. The result obtained in the work corresponds to approximately 0.656, which is very close to the golden ratio. The golden ratio starts as 0.618. Leonardo da Vinci learned mathematics from Luca Pacioli, one of the famous and respected mathematicians of the period. In this way, he discovered that drawing the correct drawing was only possible if the center points of the circle and the square were different from each other. Because when the centers of both shapes were at the same point, the solution became impossible. Leonardo da Vinci created this work not only as a work of art but also as a scientific study. He created his work with great care. The same meticulousness is also seen in his works The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. The famous painter drew using the golden ratio in these works, as in his work Vitruvian Man. Because he is very influenced by the golden ratio,